Well, hallelujah, we're going to look at the creation Torah, where from a carpenter's point of view, if you're doing a job, you don't really record how long it takes to get the materials. This part of the creation Torah, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. We're not actually told how many days actually take place that God created the heaven and earth. So what you've got is the materials here for the planets and the stars. You've got the gases, and you've got all these different things. And I suppose that scientists speculate that there could have been a big bang for everything, but we're not actually told in Scripture just how things came about. It just says that God in the beginning created the heavens and the earth, and then the Bible actually tells us it took 6 days for God to work on the earth and the rest of the universe to its completion that we see now. And I guess people in the gap theory speculate that between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2 that the angels actually fell from heaven. This is during Lucifer's rebellion, and they also speculate that perhaps one of the planets in this solar system belonged to the fallen cherub Lucifer, which is possible because obviously the planet between Mars and Jupiter has been destroyed, so that theory is possible. But then it must have happened sometime between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, because what God is doing now is basically creating what's in the earth, and He's repositioning and working on the rest of the galaxy and galaxies and the rest of the universe again. Well, you see the asteroid belt here, which is the Oort cloud, which obviously Nibiru has to pass through before actually reaching the earth. Donald Brownlee, the principal investigator of the Stardust mission, states about comets: most of the components of the comet have isotopic compositions similar to Earth and are of the solar system origin, which actually could provide evidence that indeed comets have came from an exploded planet, which is actually very, very close to the Earth and Mars, which is in fact the next planet after Mars, and would be referred to as the exploded planet called Nibiru. Part of that planet is believed obviously to be travelling in the opposite direction, and all these comets are in fact just a result of that exploded fifth planet. I'll leave you a link to the video which I previously did about this. So there must have been a massive catastrophe at some point, but that's called the gap theory. Now we're going to investigate into the 6 days of creation. Of course, you don't have to believe in the gap theory to actually study the 6 days of creation, which is studied in most of the churches, but not in any great depth, of course. But today I hope that we're going to shed some light on issues that have never really been touched on or thought about before, that we can use deductive reasoning to actually get to the truth of the matter, so which we're about to do now.
Everybody knows Elohim created the heavens and the earth, the trees, the animals, and the peeps. I'm talking about the whole wide world. That's right. 6 days. And on the 7th day, He blessed it, and He set it apart. That's right. We call it Shabbat. A time to reflect and give props to Elohim.
Now, before we move into the 6 days of creation, we have to really learn what time is. And the formula for time is movement plus conjunction equals time. So that could be the revolution of the planets around the sun, it could be the revolution of the sun around the galaxy, or it could be a planet which is revolving in, for instance, a 24-hour period, where of course the God of the universe just decided to step down on one of these space rocks and begin to actually reposition and to actually create the rest of the universe. In other words, to actually work on the universe. And I believe He chose to do this on our planet Earth, and I don't think there's really any other explanation as which I'm about to explain to you, other than the one that I've come up with through prayer. Firstly, we see that Yahweh is saying, "Let there be light," and what we see is the light being separated from the darkness, and then it says the evening and the morning is the first day. Now you're not going to have an evening and then a morning unless you're actually standing on a planet which is revolving, because all you have just now is the universe, which is half pitch black and half light. Okay, basically that's what we have in day one, the separation of the light from the darkness. And the only way that it's going to become morning and then evening is if a planet is actually revolving in, let's say, a 24-hour cycle. Okay, so obviously God chose this Earth, and this space rock was one which was revolving in a 24-hour cycle, or it could have been modified by him, of course. We're not certain at this period that it's a 24-hour cycle until we get to the fourth day, but I'll explain that later. So what can we retain from the first day? Well, we know that Satan's angels fell out the kingdom of heaven, and there was a separation of the angelic kingdom of light, or the heavenly kingdom, with Satan's kingdom of darkness. And what we seem to have on the first day is a reflection of this, that during the day on Earth is awash with light. Remember, the planet's an aquatic planet, and it's very, very bright during the day. Probably 2/3 of the actual cycle is daytime, so let's speculate that 1/3 would be night, and it would be pitch blackness and pitch darkness, and until the fourth day, of course. Now we're going to look at the second day, remembering that Yahweh, of course, is spirit, and he's hovering over the waters at this stage. He's not standing anywhere, which again proves that God is spirit, and it's not actually a solid liquid or a gas, but that God is spirit. I guess the fourth element, which is undescript in our science books. Okay, let's talk about day 2 of creation, where you've got actually the creation of the firmament, or the separating of the waters, and then just like in a human birth, the firmament is actually born out of this. And I believe that the Lord also probably opened up some kind of portals to actually create universes from. Just as you see here in this picture, we have the Large Hadron Collider, which follows very similar principles to what Nikola Tesla talks about here, which I'll quote from him. Nikola Tesla discovering in about 1893 the alternating current, the manipulation of light, X-rays, radio, remote control, robotics, electric motor, and so on. Limitless free energy, basically, was what he's least known for, because all the patents that he achieved were actually taken from him and attributed to a man called Thomas Edison, who didn't really discover these things. And as the electricity companies would have not earned any money if the free energy got out, then these findings were covered up. Nikola Tesla believed in the ether, which is just above the earth, and was obviously created during the second day when God separated the waters. And we see his account that the dark matter was there before God said let there be light, and then the photons came and mixed with the hydrogen, and the water actually came from the bound hydrogen, and then the other elements were actually born out of that, just such as you plant seeds in the ground and they actually sprout up. So they're actually soils that sprout up from, you know, very, very small seeds, and they're actually watered. In the same way, the firmament actually came about through the actual waters that God separated during the second day, and dry land did appear. And Tesla believed that those he knew that that God controlled the photons, and he controlled the universe and the weather. And Nikola Tesla was able to actually invent some things to do with weather manipulation and creation, and many believe that harp today is one of his early inventions, which could be being used today. And when we see the coloured, upside down coloured rainbow, it could be a sign that the harp technology has been used, and these sound waves have bounced off the ether, just like you would roll a cue ball into a side cushion of a pool table, and it comes down at an angle and it might cause an earthquake. And yes, these weapons are very much known today. And Nikola Tesla also commented that he was grateful for Einstein and his erroneous theories because they led mankind away from that dangerous path I followed, although I'm quite certain that Nikola Tesla would not have approved of the LHC experiments that are taking place today, which are very dangerous, opening up space gates and creating second day of creation atmosphere, where different beings can actually enter through. But that's a whole different topic. You know, Nikola Tesla was a true genius, even though Einstein had some very, very good theories. Nikola Tesla is the true genius, and most of the things we have today, the electric motor, different things, obviously alternating currents and everything, is just discovered by Nikola Tesla. Well, indeed, what we can learn about the second day is that before the flood of Noah, there was an extra layer of this waters above the earth, which actually distributed an even temperature all the way around the earth. And even today it's said that there is a very, very warm part of the South Pole, which always stays between about 60 and 70 degrees, actually very near the pole. And they've discovered all kind of tropical things there going back a long time. So again, if you want to investigate the very powerful energy belt around the earth, you can study Nikola Tesla's findings, and you can just take a simple thread transmitter, and you can charge things like your phone, and without even a generator. And you just got to know that these photons or light particles were the ones that were feeding the plants in the third day, which we're about to go into, until the fourth day, when the star systems would have actually come into being during that time. Science does actually back this up, of course, that stars are dying and being born all the time, even just now. So basically the planetary bodies usually remain the same unless they're actually obviously attacked by meteors, but unless an actual star explodes, then planetary bodies always remain intact. And obviously conditions for life depend on the temperature and the so-called Goldilocks zone, which is between about the third and fifth planets in our solar system.
Oh Lord, come into my life. Don't let me go through this darkness alone. Meet me where the sky hits the mountains, where your word meets your spirit. Come and live inside me. You're the light of my life, the sun on my face, the salt of the earth, the dew in the air. You're what keeps my soul free, yet grounded in truth. My strength and my song, my salvation. He comes from darkening scales of vice to clear the inward sight, and all the eyeballs of the blind to pour celestial light. He comes with broken hearts to bind, the bleeding souls to cure, and with the treasures of His grace to enrich the poor. The sacred year has now fold except of the Lord. When heaven's high promises is fulfilled and Israel is restored.
Your spirit, let me so free in your kingdom. Give me grace so I climb mountains, reach the word of truth to all this world.
So on the fourth day of creation, the Lord would have created the phase of the moon on the fourth phase, which we see here. And the Lord didn't lie when he said that he created the luminaries for days and for years and for signs and for seasons. The Lord is not a liar. So, you know, when we actually look at the phases of the moon, God originally intended us to actually use the phases of the moon to determine the days. And if you don't believe me, we will actually go ahead and we will actually study the book of Numbers and different parts of the Torah, which actually back this up, and that new moons and Sabbaths always go hand in hand, according to the biblical calendar, that is. And that's of course compared to the pagan calendar that we have today, which looks something like this. And this is the pagan calendar that's been kept since Constantine in the 4th century, in the year 321. He took the 7-day Hebrew cycle, but he actually divorced it with the phases of the moon. Now all one needs to do is read the biblical Old Testament, New Testament accounts, where the beast empires are all about pagan worship of the luminaries, and that's all they're really about. So this present 7-day cycle is not true time. It doesn't represent God's true 7 days. In fact, 6 days when he actually created the heaven and the earth. And as you can see, day 1 was when God created the light. We saw that. But in their pagan calendar they call it Sunday. And then the next day we have Moon Day. Now the moon wasn't created until of course day 4, the same as the sun. So again, it's just idolatrous, pagan. Doesn't match up with the Torah, and so on. We see the Germanic Norse gods mentioned in the next days until we get to Saturn's day, which again is a planet. The planets weren't actually properly created and aligned, at least until we know the 2nd day about the firmament of heaven. But then this is called the 7th day in the pagan calendar, and Saturn is a pagan god with actually the 6-pointed star as its symbol, as we see here. So let's look at obviously the prophet Amos, and it's in the book of Acts where the Lord tells us this. And Solomon was the one who took Israel into this idolatrous worship, and even though the Jewish people have fought not to have this 6-pointed star, put on them, I guess, by the financiers of the State of Israel, the Rothschilds, which in German is really just Red Shield. And what we actually see here is Mr. Edgar Hoover as well, who's very much involved in right at the heart of the conspiracy today. Satan ruling the nations through the Nazi Swiss Templar banks, and with the Jesuits very much training up all the worldly leaders that we see today. Very much Chatterfrat's channel uncovers a lot of truths, and Mr. Edgar Hoover and these people are the Illuminati. These are the ones that are actually worshipping the luminaries, and they're actually obviously not using them as God intended them to. My question is, have you sinned? Have you ever sinned in your life? Have you ever broken a commandment? Have you ever lied, stolen, broken a Sabbath? The sacrificial system was put in place because of sin, because we could not keep the commands of the great I Am, Yahweh. Now what I'm about to read out to you today is from, it's Bamidbar 28, Numbers 28. And it proves that today we're not only keeping a false calendar system, but we're not allowing Yahshua's blood to fully atone for us in keeping his Torah after we have become born again. Now the first passage is when Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, Take heed to bring me an offering, my food for my offerings made by fire as a sweet sacrifice to me at their appointed time." Their Moedim, appointed time, alright? "And you shall say to them, This is the offering made by fire which you shall bring to Yahweh, 2 male lambs, a year old, perfect ones, daily, a continual burnt offering." So when I talk about bringing praise to the true God daily, yes, that's alright. Now, this part is in verse 9, "And on the Sabbath day 2 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour, as a grain offering mixed with oil, with its drink offering." So there is a different sacrifice for the Sabbath than there are for regular days. So it's a set apart day, no work and no buying and selling. Now that law still applies today to those of us born again. They're called out ones who are born again and are called after the name of Yahudah, those who praise Yahweh. Whether we are born Israelites, we were born Jewish, physical Jews, or we're engrafted branches, we still praise the same God, okay? Now the next part. Verse 11 is the giveaway, because
we have what is called postponements in this present system. Now, if you think that observing Judaism, having Judaism in your life means that you actually start observing Torah, you're mistaken. Now, the Messiah spoke to the Pharisee, and he said to them, how are you going to believe in my words if you do not believe in Moses' writings, because his writings speak of me? Now, if they were properly keeping the Torah, remember the sacrificial system was there because man couldn't keep the Torah, but they were actually saying that they were keeping it, just like many believers are today. No, you're not keeping it, unless you're keeping it daily in faith with the Messiah. Each day is a new day. Each day we have to offer a new offering to the Most High. And if you haven't done that in a day that you've actually fallen, you've not given the Most High his correct praise on that day, then you're falling away. Now let's read on. On the beginnings of your months. Now the Hebrews kept months according to the moon, the first sliver of the moon, and there was usually 12 of them in a year, in a Shana, and this is where Constantine got the idea for his new calendar, because Rome did not keep this before 321. Read Daniel 7:25. On the beginnings of your months you shall bring near a burnt offering to Yahweh, 2 bulls and 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones. So this is a different offering than the one for the Sabbath, which proves that the new moons and the Sabbath days are separate days. Now in this calendar system we sometimes have postponements, and the 7-day cycle lands on a new moon. Now most believers don't observe the new moon, and there are even Israelites that continue to observe the new moon but don't observe the Sabbaths according to the word of Elohim, the word of Yahweh. So how can you have 2 offerings on the same day? You can't have that in Yahweh's calendar, because every day is either, is a distinct day. It's either a working day, a Sabbath, or a new moon. And then in this chapter it goes on to give the separate offerings for the special Sabbaths, the high Sabbaths in the calendar, which are the Passover and Feast of Tabernacles and Feast of Trumpets, and so on. So Bamidbar, Numbers 20, proves that you're following a false calendar system. Now you can keep leaving little messages saying Shabbat Shalom when it isn't a Sabbath. It doesn't really bother me, but I'm praying for you, because in these last days Yahweh's calling out a people for himself. And now if you're keeping if you're keeping a day and it's not the correct day, then the blood does not extend to you. You've actually fallen from grace. You've actually stopped observing the Torah, even though you say you're observing Torah. No, you're not, and you need to get on your knees and repent. Jew or Gentile, even if you're born again, there are no Torah teachers today out there quite with what Paul spent hours and hours teaching the ecclesia, the called out ones. He spent hours teaching them all these things, because remember, the Gentiles didn't have these things as their inheritance, but Israel did. We must do things in faith so that these unveilings, these revelations come to us. Sometimes they come to us in appointed days, sometimes they're just regular days, because every day we should be praising his name. Every day we should be in praise for him, seeking to do his will. But there are special days that we bring special offerings to him on, and these days are holy days. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it has reached past your ears and actually into your heart, into your mind. As I said before, I've taught on this before. If you can write on a piece of paper 4 weeks. These are the weeks that are fixed from new moon to new moon. Okay, that is the 7-day cycle that Yahweh put in his creation. And there is no continuous 7-day cycle out with the new moons, which Constantine tried to do, whereby we could have different holy days falling in the same day, which is impossible in Yahweh's calendar.
Now there has been many theories debunked here in this video. Things like you need a star to start life, and that's why there's sun worship. Well, we showed in this that it was the photons, it was the light particles that were sustaining the grass and the trees in the third day, before actually our star, the sun, was created on day 4. We've debunked the Gregorian calendar, where we use that for days, where they're not in fact real-time days, and it is in fact light that determines true time and movement plus conjunction, as we discussed. And here we see the two scientists here, one a Jew and one a Christian, two of the most brilliant men in the past few hundred years. I hope you've enjoyed studying the first 4 days of creation with us, and we hope to return in a part 2 where we can study days 5, 6 and 7 at some point. But until then, may the Lord bless you, and thank you for listening.